what you're looking at in this image here is a sort of cartoonish representation of what prebiotic Earth might have looked like 4.5 billion years ago, before there was life on it. Sort of a hot mess. And then somehow, over the last 4.5 billion years, we went from this lifeless, sort of hot planet to what we see today, where there are millions of different organisms that have been described, and they range in diversity from tiny bacteria that live in your gut to fungi to whale sharks. And despite these differences, there are a number of traits that all these species have in common. They have DNA, they're composed of cells, they process information and energy. And this course is about understanding where all these different types of organisms came from. So we'll answer some big questions in this 150 lecture. Number one, where did all these organisms come from? Number two, what common traits enable these organisms to survive and reproduce? And number three, why should we care? Some other overarching goals is to look at science, and not just facts, but also the science behind them. Science is typically taught as a bunch of facts and terms to be learned and memorized, but all of those facts had to come from somewhere. This is the process, or the process of science. The process side of science is rarely explicitly taught, which is unfortunate because it's the most fundamental and fun part of science. It involves creativity, it explores the unknown, and has resulted in some of man's greatest achievements. The process side is what we'll emphasize in this course. So we'll be learning facts about the natural world, things like evolution, natural selection, speciation, taxonomic groups, adaptations, anatomy and physiology, and also things like ecosystem services. And we'll also be learning about the scientific research that these facts are based on. Another overarching goal of this course is to help you climb up what's called Bloom's taxonomy of learning. This pyramid of learning begins with memorizing important facts and concepts and builds upon them, allowing you to perform more complex tasks like understanding ideas, applying them to new and novel situations, and beginning to analyze and draw connections between them. This lecture will concentrate on these bottom four layers of remembering, understanding, applying, and analyzing, and provide you not only with the foundation of important biological concepts and terms, but also allow you to understand these concepts, apply them to new situations, and draw connections between them in your own life. Another goal of this course is to help you read and interpret scientific experiments, data, graphs, and figures so you can think critically about what constitutes evidence in the natural sciences and root out bullcrap. So for example, let's look at this graph from a study that argued that thyroid cancer is linked to the use of Roundup pesticides, also known as glyphosate. Let's first look at what's going on in this graph. On the x-axis, we're looking at the time from 1975 to 2008. On the left-hand y-axis, we're comparing the incidence of thyroid cancer per every 100,000 people sampled, represented by the yellow bars. And on the right-hand y-axis, we're looking at the amount of glyphosate pesticide applied within the study region and year of along the x-axis in thousands of metric tons, which is represented by this red line here. What you see is that glyphosate use and the incidence of thyroid cancer are positively correlated. As more glyphosate is used on crops, the incidence of thyroid cancer also increases in a similar manner. The authors use this finding to argue that thyroid cancer is caused by glyphosate-based pesticides like Roundup. Can you come up with one or two problems with this conclusion? Please hit pause on the video and think about it for a minute before you proceed. Okay, so one obvious issue is that correlation is not causation. Just because glyphosate use and thyroid cancer increase over time from 1990 to 2008 doesn't mean that one causes the other to increase. Just as a silly example, you could probably say that Justin Bieber tweets have also increased in a similar fashion during that time period, but obviously saying that Justin Bieber causes thyroid cancer would be silly. The point here is that there are many other underlying covariates that were not measured in this study, but are also increasing over time and could be linked to the increase in thyroid cancer. The only way to really establish causation is to use what's called an experimental study that compares thyroid incidence in two groups, a treatment group exposed to pesticides and a control group that's not exposed to any pesticides, while also making sure that there are no other underlying differences between these two groups. If the exposed group gets cancer more often than the unexposed control group, then and only then can you say that Roundup is causing cancer. Another issue that's a bit more subtle, but perhaps even more devious, is that the authors appear to be manipulating the axes on this graph so that the yellow cancer incidence bars line up perfectly with the red glyphosate line. For example, why is the left axis starting at 4 instead of 0? And why is the right axis starting at negative 10? What does negative 10,000 tons of glyphosate even mean? This is all a bit fishy and should set off some alarm bells. Anyhow, this is just a long-winded way of giving you one example of a skill we'd like you to pull from this course, the ability to think critically about data and what constitutes evidence in the natural sciences. All right, back to course logistics. This course will use the 4th edition of How Life Works. This is what the book looks like and a list of acceptable ISBNs. Although there are a few graded activities that require access to the textbook, we mostly use this text as a supplement to the lectures in the form of assigned but mostly optional readings. The text can be very useful if that's how you prefer to learn. We will not use Achieve, but you're welcome to access the ebook through Achieve, which is what most students do. If you do use the ebook, you can use this course ID, 9GHD9V, and know that all of these details are also listed on our Canvas homepage under the required texts and materials link. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about that. Other course logistics. This course is largely organized through Canvas modules, and you'll need to use the Modules tab in Canvas to work through the materials. If you click on the Modules tab in our course homepage, you'll see a list of subject modules like you see in the image here. Now let's take a look at what's inside of each module. So here is Module 1. One of the first things you'll note is each module has a recommended complete by date. If you do the math, we'll cover about a semester worth of material in approximately 17 working days, not counting weekends. So I've tried to help you pace yourself by recommending when you should complete each module. Just know that these recommended completion days are optional, but highly, highly, highly recommended. So for example, you should complete Module 1 on the first day of class. To complete a module, you have to move through the must-do items, like you see listed here, sequentially. And that will unlock each subsequent item as you complete each one. So for example, in Module 1, you'll need to watch Lecture 2, then complete the post-lecture quiz before you can watch Lecture 3, etc., etc. Note that some must-do items have deadlines. These will typically, but not always, be due the day before a major exam. Although you can, I would highly recommend against waiting until the deadline to submit these assignments. There will be too many to do all at once. Your best strategy is to try and complete each item on the day recommended, the completion day for each module, once again posted at the top of each module. And as I mentioned earlier, but we'll say it again, if you want to stay on pace, you should typically complete about one module each weekday of this course. In addition to the must-do items, each module will also include supplementary files. like you see listed here. These are things like PDFs of lecture slides, activity keys, supplementary lectures, lists of helpful textbook readings, etc., etc. The electronic slides can be very helpful to review lecture videos without having to watch the videos all over again. They can also be useful to write on and take notes while you watch the lectures if you keep notes electronically on a tablet or some other device. Anyhow, I just want you to be aware that those items are available to you within each module. Next, I want to cover what's called the tentative course schedule that you can find on the Canvas homepage. And here it is. Once again, you can find this on our Canvas homepage, and it's linked within many places on Canvas. Although this is an asynchronous course, there are various Canvas quizzes, assignments, and exams that will have deadlines and windows of availability. This course schedule or tentative schedule, as you see plotted out here, will remind you of when exams are available and close and how to keep on track to complete things on time. So let's zoom in on the section outlined in blue here to understand this in a little bit more. So here's that same tentative schedule from the previous slide, and all we've done is just zoom in on one unit, the biodiversity unit. Moving across the table, you can see the modules, you can see the lecture numbers and topics associated with each module, and you can see the recommended date of completion for each lecture or assignment. So for example, you can see that I'm recommending watching lectures 2 and 3 and completing Module 1 by Tuesday, May 27th. Lectures 4 and 5 and the associated case study by Wednesday, May 28th. So on and so on. At the bottom of the unit outlined in red, you can see the information about the first exam, which is available for a 5-day window from Friday, May 30th through Tuesday, June 3rd. You will have 50 minutes to complete the exam anytime within that 5-day window. Note that each of these dates that you see as a recommended completion date on this table align with the recommended day of completion written at the top of each module in the Modules tab on Canvas, so that you'll learn the Unit 1 content in the first 5 days or so and take Exam 1 by day 6. Okay, a few more details about exams. This course has 3 exams and a cumulative final. Here are the dates that each exam will be available. As I mentioned before, each regular exam is available for a 5-day window, and once you begin, you will have 50 minutes to complete the exam. The final exam will be available for a 3-day window, and you'll have 2 hours to complete it once you begin. A few more details on preparing for exams. Each exam has its own module under the Modules tab in Canvas. These modules have all the details you need to prepare for each exam. For example, here's the Exam 1 module that includes a study guide, exam rules and details, advice from past students on how to prepare for exams, optional review questions, a lockdown browser practice quiz to be sure the browser is working on your setup, and of course, the exam itself. So if you have any questions about the exam logistics or preparation, this is definitely the place to go to. It'll have all the information that you need. A few details about how exams will be administered and proctored using Respondus Monitor in the Lockdown browser. This software monitors while you take the exam and flags any suspicious activity like leaving the room, talking to others for answers, or pulling up a phone or other devices. You'll need to download the Lockdown browser app to your laptop or tablet. You'll also need a device with a camera and a mic and access to high-speed internet. You'll also need to make sure you use the restroom before each exam so you don't have to leave the room. And be sure you don't have a cell phone or other devices out during the exams. If the software sees a cell phone or sees you constantly looking down at your lap to type into your phone or other device, it will flag your video for me to review. The bottom line is please make sure you've got the hardware and software set up and running on your computer to take exams, and please do not cheat. So this is the grade breakdown for the course. All of these details are in the syllabus for you to review. But here's how point percentages in the course and letter grades break down. Note that 55% of your grade comes from the exams, 13% from exam 1, 14% from exam 2, 3, and the cumulative final, and the other 45% of your grade comes from the other activities, quizzes, and case studies, etc., that we'll be submitting to Canvas. Lastly, there is no extra credit in this course. Final grades are non-negotiable, and you have a 1-week window to challenge any grades. So please make sure you keep on top of that stuff. Please regularly check announcements. I will communicate with you almost entirely through Canvas announcements. It will be your responsibility to check them regularly on Canvas, or however you choose to receive Canvas course announcements if you have them forwarded to your email, etc. Please know that I did not see the announcement will not be an acceptable excuse for missing something. Other details to review on the syllabus that's available on Canvas are, of course, the JMU Honor Code. Please make sure you're familiar with that. Add drop deadlines for this course. You should also review exam and assignment details and makeup policies. So, for example, there are no makeups or dropped exams. You have to complete them within the window of time provided. Anyone seen using a phone or other device during an exam will receive a 0. Also, many of the assignments, other than the exams, you can submit late or past the deadline with a 10% per day late penalty. How to find me. I will be available on Tuesdays from 9:15 to 10:15 and Thursdays from 2 to 3 for open office hours via Zoom. You can also schedule an appointment with me if those times are not going to work for you. Please just make sure you email me in advance if you plan to attend those office hours, or if you'd like to meet with me independently, just so I know someone's going to show up. The major way to communicate with me is through my email address, hymanoj@jmu.edu. Please don't try to contact me through Canvas emails, as I won't check those regularly. So definitely send stuff to my @jmu.edu email if you need to get in touch. So how do you succeed in this course? Well, I think an old mayor of New York City, Ed Koch, said it best. I can explain this to you, but I can't comprehend it for you. What that means is to succeed in this course, or really any aspect of life, you have to take an active role in it. So how do you do that? Well, firstly, you need to actively watch the lectures. That means staying engaged during the lecture videos, taking notes while you watch, reviewing your notes regularly, pausing the lectures if I ask multiple choice questions to allow yourself time to answer them, and perhaps most importantly, avoiding multitasking, having multiple windows open, listening to distracting music or podcasts, and resisting streaming Netflix or playing video games while the lecture videos are playing in the background. Just to give you an idea of how important this is, here are some data looking at student scores on an exam versus the total amount of lecture videos that they watched. Each dot represents an individual student. So for example, this student right here watched 60% of the lecture content and scored a 40% on the associated exam. And as you can hopefully see, the general trend is that students who watched less video content tended to perform poorly, while those who watched or even rewatched videos tended to perform much better. These two things are positively correlated. And although, as we learned earlier, correlation is not causation, this does provide evidence supporting the hypothesis that viewing the lectures improves overall student performance in this course. Other things you can do to succeed in this course. Number 1, manage your time wisely. As I mentioned before, we'll cover about 3 months of content in about 17 working days. You should plan to spend 3 to 6 hours per weekday on this course and try to closely follow the recommended timeline and dates to complete each module and its associated assignments. Number 2, do your best to avoid rushing through or trying to game the Canvas assignments and quizzes. These assignments are designed to help you review the material, apply it in new ways, and overall learn the material. See them not just as tasks that need to be completed, but as a learning opportunity. Number 3, if you feel like there are major gaps in your knowledge or the lectures are not working for you to learn certain concepts, the assigned readings can be very helpful to fill in those gaps or reinforce the material in a different format. So please take advantage of those. And lastly, if stuff isn't making sense, come and talk to me. Okay, that's all I've got for now. Please get started working your way through the modules, starting with Module 0 and Module 1. Good luck!